Excited to learn with you today. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're calling in from around the world. We are so thrilled that you are choosing to invest an hour learning with us today. My name is Becky Robinson, and I'm here today with author Eduardo Briceño, also special guests Lizzy Metzger, Andy Kimball, and Francesca Lenchi. And Eduardo will be introducing his special guests as we get going. But as we get started today, I do want to let you know about a few technical considerations for today's event. So the first is that we are striving to create an inclusive community with our webinar events. So we do have closed captioning available for you in the bottom of your Zoom panel, and I welcome you to turn the closed captioning on if that would help you to benefit more fully from today's event. Also, we hope that our chat can be a place where you can get your questions answered and connect with others in community. So we want to invite you at this time to say hello to us in the chat and let us know where you're calling in from today. If you happen to be calling in as part of professional development and you're representing an organization today, we would love to know what organization you're representing as well, and I'd love to give you a shout out. So I see that a few of you are starting to communicate in the chat. So welcome in Orange, California, in Tucson, Arizona, in Houston, Atlanta. It looks like we have Christina from London, from Meta Lucid, Steve in Atlanta. I love seeing everyone greet each other, and it looks like we do have an international audience represented already: Stockholm, Sweden, Canada, many states represented. So we are so thrilled that you are choosing to invest some time learning with us today. I do want to let you know that we are recording today's event. It will be available for you to share with your friends and colleagues and potentially to watch later. So before we dive into today's topic, I do want to briefly introduce our author, Eduardo Briceño. His book, The Performance Paradox, and actually this is just the paperback galley. It is a hardcover coming on September 5th from Ballantine Books, and we are so thrilled to be able to give you a sneak preview of the book's content. Additionally, Eduardo is a global keynote speaker and a facilitator who guides many of the world's leading companies in cultivating growth mindset cultures. He's worked with Microsoft, Siemens, Uber, and many others, and his TED Talk has been viewed over 9 million times. So if you enjoy today's learning, you're going to want to check out that TEDx talk and watch it. A few other things to know about Eduardo: he's a Pahara Aspen Fellow, a member of the Aspen Institute's Global Leadership Network, and an inductee in the Happiness Hall of Fame. So Eduardo, welcome. We are so thrilled to learn with you today, and I will be back on with you later in the broadcast for some questions. So please feel free to put those in the chat throughout today's event.
Thank you, Becky. It's great to be here. I am so excited for today. I'm really excited to speak with three extraordinary individuals who are incredible models of learning and performance, both professionally and personally. So I've learned a ton from them, and I'm excited for all of us to learn from them, from their stories, from their strategies. As I wrote the book, one of my favorite aspects of writing the book was interviewing people, and I interviewed over 100 people. There's over 60 fantastic learners and performers featured in the book. We have 3 of them here today, and you know, the people I reached out to interview were people that I came across in my journey, in my career, and including the last 16 years doing this work focused on growth mindset. And Lizzy, Andy, and Francesca are, you know, 3 amazing people who inspire me. So I look forward to that. So we'll start by I'm going to interview them in the order that they appear in the book. And I'm going to start with Lizzy Metzger, whom we meet in chapter 2. And to give you a little bit of background on Lizzy, the way I met her is I was speaking at an event for New York Life, and she was another one of the speakers. And so I listened to her keynote. I love to learn from other speakers, but also it gives me context for the organization and things that I can talk about. And so I've heard and watched like probably 1,000 keynotes, definitely hundreds. And Lizzy was one of the best keynotes I've ever heard. It was so inspiring, and it was so inspiring to hear about her story. And Lizzy was speaking that day because she was what they call President's Council, the president of counsel or council president. That was very, very smooth. She was council president. Council refers to chairman's council is kind of the highest level of performance within New York Life agents. So the New York Life has like thousands of agents, and the top 6 to 8% make what's called chairman's council. And there's actually one level above that called cabinet, which is the top 50 agents. And Lizzy has been making that level for the past 9 or 10 years straight, and chairman's council for the past like 11 years. So she's been super, super successful. And that year she was the #1 agent. And so that's what's called council president. And that's what she was speaking. She also made Forbes puts out a list of the top financial security professionals. And 2 years ago, Lizzy was named #12. And last year she was named #6 and the top female. She's been incredibly successful in her career. And that's where she is today. But what I find most interesting about everybody that we'll speak about today is not kind of how successful they are today, but what their journey has been and what they have learned along the way and how they continue to become and to evolve over time. So that's what I would love to get to with Lizzy today. So welcome, Lizzy. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. And hello to everyone. I'm so excited and ecstatic to see there's people from all over the world really on this call right now.
Yes, and it's fun to see people that I know and people that I don't know. Welcome, everybody. So Lizzy, I would love to start kind of a little bit before 2010. You started working at New York Life in 2010. What kinds of jobs did you have before then? And what led you to move to El Paso? And how did you end up becoming a New York Life agent?
So I went to Pomona College and I got out of college and really didn't know exactly where I wanted to go. And so I tried management consulting for a second, didn't really like that. Then went into sales. I worked selling conference calling and then decided, I got pregnant with my first child, Sabrina, and decided that I wanted to be home. So I came back to El Paso, not knowing what to do, did weddings, was like a kindergartner teacher. I did a lot of different things before I joined New York Life. And I think I was 33 when I did. And so that's something that I always tell people that are really confused or getting out of school or really don't know their path, that it really doesn't matter. You just need to really just follow your passions because eventually you'll find your path. College kids put so much pressure on themselves to know exactly what they're supposed to do the next day. And it's the time that you're supposed to be able to explore. So that's what took me to New York Life. And at 33, it's when I finally found, my life's calling of being an advisor.
Now, so you moved back to El Paso, which was your hometown. I think it was the hometown of your husband too, right, Brian?
No, he's from Illinois.
Illinois, okay.
He
so you went
loves
back
El Paso, so it's good.
The two of you moved back to El Paso at a time when you had started a business and Brian had started a business that had failed. And so you were kind of coming back financially, repaying business loans. It was a strained financial situation for the two of you. And he got a job at New York Life.
That's right.
And my understanding is you then tried to start helping him. Is that right? And did you start going to his office, and what were you doing to try to help him?
Yeah, he had a business selling like car parts and custom cars, and that failed, with the recession. And he found this job at New York Life, being a life, agent in New York Life, and eventually an advisor as well. And I was just trying to help him. So I was super pregnant when he first started. Then I had my son, Sebastian, who's now 14.
But that's your third, right? Your third kid?
The third. Yeah. So I was like raising 3 kids, but I was in the office trying to help him. And they just said, hey, well, why don't you, you're helping him all the time. Why don't you just try being an agent? And I just said, okay, I'll try. But I mean, I had a really little, he was like 6 months old. So I was like, I'll try, but I'm not really sure. that I'm able to give you 100% commitment. And they were like, that's okay, just see what happens. But I just have this nature to me that that I've always been taught that you have to give everything 100%. So even though they kind of gave me the pass not to give, the full commitment, as soon as I got into it, I was just finding time to do it outside of raising the 3 kids.
And one of the things that gives you that energy is kind of understanding the purpose of your work and the impact that you have on other people. And at the time, a lot of people were saying, are you sure you want to be? I mean, the people at the school, you had been a kindergarten teacher for 3 years, and the other teachers were saying, what financial agent, and kind of your family was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And you kind of looked for other people's stories to understand the impact that you could make. Can you talk a little bit about how you searched for the idea that you were going to be making an impact, and how did you find that purpose in the work that you do now?
Yeah, that's so important, because everybody told me, are you kidding me? I mean, everybody's watched Groundhog Day with the life insurance guy, right? So it was like, really? And I mean, like the girls that I had taught kindergarten with, well, not kindergarten, it was like the 3s and 2s, the little kids with, were like, what are you doing now? You're selling life insurance? So really, it was a really tough time, especially because my family really wasn't behind it. They were very, very confused as to why I wanted to do this. So I really started looking upon other stories. And I'll tell you one that was super impactful is that there was this video in the story, and we met the family, and they were from South Florida, and they were an immigrant family, and they had gotten life insurance, and the husband died like in his 40s, very young. And the mom, in this video, she was telling the story of how those little boys are able to have their life, and the family has been able to continue, their lifestyle and what they need to do because they left that gift of life insurance. And so, I mean, even now I get like goosebumps about it. And I just remember I was bawling my eyes out over this story, and just saying, okay, if I can make even kind of this impact on other people, then really this is the career for me. And as that's really what drives me every single day, is just being able to know, like, okay, when I do this is really hard work, but when I do this is the impact that I'm going to make. And I think now I have like 1 billion, somewhere close to 1 billion, might be over 1 billion, a little under 1 billion in life insurance in this community and throughout the US, which means that the work that I've done is going to impact the world and these families by at least $1 billion. I mean, it's so amazing to me, because it's not about money at the end of the day. It's about security and the families and keeping them intact, and that's a huge deal.
And that's the thing that struck me the most when I've started working with New York Life, and I've now been at several events, was the purpose. The mission for New York Life is to provide financial security and peace of mind, and how much people talk about that on stage and also off stage, and people just remind each other of the purpose of the work. That's really inspiring to me. Now, when you first started at New York Life, you were under a lot of financial pressure. One of the goals that you set for yourself is to make 21 outbound calls every day to try to sell insurance. But what ties very kind of specifically to the subject of the book is that you didn't just kind of make outbound calls and try to close deals, which is a performance zone, right? It's when we do things as best as we know how, but you also did lots of things to learn and develop yourself at the time and ever since. So can you say a little bit about what you did early on to not just perform your job, but also learn skills and improve over time?
Yeah, because I knew I didn't know what I was doing, right? But I needed to be able to have some amount of performance. So at that case, that's when I was making those calls, not knowing what the results of those calls would be, just to be able to actually start doing that. But I knew, even as I was having those meetings in the very beginning, that I was really lost, didn't have a clue. And I had read other books, Tipping Point, and read about the 10,000 hour rule. So it was like, I need to get 10,000 hours quicker than the normal person. That's literally what I was thinking. And with that, I was just soaking up knowledge. So I decided, okay, what's the best way to do that? So I went for my master's degree, my CFP, and all my licenses and designations. So my Series 6, 66, 7, and 63. And I wanted to do that as quick as I possibly could, but also to be able to absorb the knowledge. And so the way I did that was decide that every quarter I'd complete a class. So just like I was back in school, I gave myself my own agenda and regimen to be able to complete those classes, so that I was not just taking a class just to take a class, but to take a class to absorb the information. And the best thing I ever did on that is to say, anytime I'm in anything, even if I'm just sitting here today, I want to know the 3 things, because there's so much information, but the 3 things that I learned today from this conference, well, this Facebook Live that we're having right now, what are those 3 things that I can take and I can use tomorrow? So I'm constantly in that zone of like, if I'm going to spend time with something, I might have 57 minutes of boring stuff, but there's got to be 3 things that I got from that.
Awesome. And here is the last question I'll ask you, and we could talk for 3 hours with each of these people, and we'll get more conversation at the end. So if anybody has any questions for Lizzy or me or anybody else throughout the session, just enter in the chat window or in the comments in Facebook. But Lizzy, one of the things, you do so many things that are an amazing example of learning and performance. And one of the things you do is right now you lead a team of people. And I would love for you to just share what happens when something goes wrong, or when people make a mistake or there's failure. What do you do?
Yeah, so I mean, I think what we like to do is we call it fail up, right? So the idea is, instead of just failing, you fail and you're moving up instead of having it bring you down. We're going to fail. If you're not failing, Warren Buffett said it once, like if you're not if you're getting every single fish, you're fishing in the too small of a pond. So there is for sure times that we're going to fail. And that's really scary for me. It's always been something that I would freak out about, is failing. I always was just a high overachiever. And I learned actually to embrace failure, because there is no one on earth ever that is never going to fail on anything. And if you don't learn from those failures, you're just doing yourself a disservice. When you fail, what we do, especially with our team, is we sit back and we just do a debrief. What did we do wrong? How do we figure out how to learn something from it and to do it differently next time? That's all it is. There's no such thing as real failure as long as you're learning from it. For me, that's success.
Awesome. Lizzy, thank you so much. We'll bring you back at the end of the conversation. I look forward to that. And I've learned so much from you over the years. So thanks again for being here, and we'll continue the conversation. So Lizzy comes in the kind of second chapter of the book, which is part of part 1. Part 1 is about driving individual growth, and it's about the key ideas and some key frameworks, and also kind of how they apply to individuals. And the big idea of the book is called the performance paradox. And the performance paradox is the counterintuitive fact that if we're only performing all the time, our performance suffers, our results suffer. So at the beginning of her, Lizzy was a mother of 3 young kids. She was under financial strain. She was limited in time, but she didn't just make phone calls to close deals. She also invested in herself, and there's lots of other ways that she did that are explained in the book. And that's what we need to do to overcome the performance paradox, is to identify how to make what we call the learning zone, which is going beyond the known, right? And experimenting and trying new things and learning from those things. And because we're doing that, we're going to be making mistakes, right? So as Lizzy said, we need to learn from those mistakes. We don't learn from mistakes, we learn from reflecting on mistakes. And that's what Lizzy and her team does by talking about them and having those debriefs. So that's part 1, is about driving individual growth. Part 2 starts in chapter 8, is about overcoming the performance paradox in teams and organizations. And we meet Andy Kimball in chapter 8, which is the first chapter in part 2. And I love Clear Choice as another company where I started working there, and I was most struck at the beginning by their purpose. They do dental implants. And I thought at the beginning, before going to the company, I thought it was kind of just aesthetics, which is fine. But I learned how the work that they do deeply impacts people, because people feel like they can't make a smile. They don't want to make a smile when they have bad teeth. That impacts their emotions, that impacts their relationships, that impacts their confidence, that impacts what they can eat. And so by helping people overcome really serious issues with their teeth, people can eat better, like smile, have positive relationships, all kinds of amazing stories. Just like, you know, in New York Life, they also have amazing stories about the impact that they do. So we meet, part 2 starts with painting a vision of what a learning organization looks like, and Clear Choice is one of those organizations. So welcome, Andy. It's great to have you here today.
Good to be here. And I've got to say, Eduardo, you've just given me a new goal in life. I now know that my life is going to be complete when I enter the Happiness Hall of Fame. That's my new goal.
Yeah, I was doing a keynote once, and afterwards somebody came to me and he said, hey, like, I'm here because we're interested in inducting you into Happiness Hall of Fame. And so I learned about it, but it became really meaningful to me because I used to be really, really unhappy growing up. And I have changed myself a lot, and I'm very happy now. And that's probably the most meaningful change that I've made in myself. So the recognition actually meant a ton to me. But so
that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's obviously the emotions make a huge difference in life. So it's so meaningful to me. So I would love, Andy, to start with when you first started working for Clear Choice. I mean, and before that, you had a lot of experience helping people improve their performance and increase their performance. And just so people know, Andy is a chief performance officer at Clear Choice. But the way they go about performance is not just telling people to perform. It has so much learning in it. But how did you become involved in Clear Choice, and what was your first project?
Yeah, boy, great question. You know, it actually goes back to the relationship I had with the CEO of Clear Choice, Kevin Mosier. My wife and I had founded a company called Cube Learning and later QB International many years ago, where it was a consulting firm that worked with organizations to build high performance sales cultures and leadership cultures. And Kevin Mosier was one of my wife's students there. And we built a relationship with Kevin. And over the years, Kevin would bring us into different companies that he moved up to. Eventually, he ended up being the CEO of Nobel Biocare, which was at the time the largest implant provider in the world, dental implant provider. Kevin brought us in, and we worked on his sales culture with his salespeople, his leaders, his executives, and he had kind of a brilliant idea that ended up impacting Clear Choice as well. And that idea was that a rising tide lifts all boats. Seems so simple. But he thought, what if we give our customers the same kinds of training that you're giving us at Nobel? What if they learned the selling skills, the leadership skills? What if they learned how to build high performance cultures? They would be more effective dental practices. And as a result, they would sell more implants, crowns, and bridges. And obviously buy those from Nobel. So we helped Nobel set up Nobel University, and Nobel sent us around the world. They were Swedish based. They sent us around the world to study different dental practices around the world. We used a number of cultural assessment tools from Yale to measure culture and measure leadership and observe how they interacted with their patients. And as a result of that, we created probably the most robust database of best practices, best leadership practices, interaction practices in the world around the dental industry. So when Kevin moved from Nobel to Clear Choice as the CEO of Clear Choice at the time was about 6 months away from bankruptcy. It was a true turnaround situation. And Kevin brought me in to help focus on the culture. How do we build a high performance culture? And at the time coming in, Kevin used the analogy that ClearChoice is coding. They are a patient who is coding, and we have to spend our first year resuscitating the patient. And our second year, we've got to spend in physical therapy, getting the patient in shape. Third year, we're going to run a marathon. And then the fourth year, we're going to run a triathlon. And so part of my job was to build a team of consultative culture experts who could help to turn the culture around and turn it from a very fear-based culture into a passion-driven, high-performance culture. So that's how I ended up coming to ClearChoice.
Fantastic. And so kind of fast forward to today, I just want to share with everybody here some of the amazing things that the structures and systems that you have set up in ClearChoice to become a learning organization. So why don't we start with onboarding? Like, what do when new employees join ClearChoice, they go on an experience and a learning experience. Why don't you describe that for us?
Sure. Yeah. Onboarding. Obviously, we onboard different people in different ways, but typically onboarding has several components. There is the universal component of we want everybody in ClearChoice to learn about the ClearChoice history, the ClearChoice vision, values, purpose, so that they can align around the nobility of what we're trying to do. We're trying to transform people's lives. As you pointed out, we want them to understand and go home and talk to their families and friends about what an extraordinary thing it is to take a patient who can't eat, who's embarrassed to go out in public, whose grandchildren are afraid of them, and help them transform their lives so that they can have a normal life. They can meet people, they can fall in love, they can do the things that people with normal teeth can do. So that's those types of programs are programs that everybody at ClearChoice takes. Then we have functional programs. So everybody who is a leader goes through leadership programs to learn the leadership mindset, leadership skill sets. Everybody in sales goes through programs to learn how to interact with our patients and how to interact with each other in a way that's open, honest, direct, in a way that's connected and authentic. That we don't want a bunch of wolves of Wall Street or manipulative, blood-sucking vampires here. We want authentic human beings. And so we teach the different functional groups how to apply these concepts and principles of being an authentic human being to their specific job, whether they're an oral surgeon or a prosthodontist or a lab tech or front office or back office staff. And then finally, in addition, they get very specific, job-specific training, the policies, procedures, protocols, what we call the 4 Ps. So everybody goes through some onboarding, but one of the keys is we try to teach them the mindsets first. How do experts think about the types of problems that they're solving? And quite frankly, that's something we learned from you, Eduardo. You came in and spoke to ClearChoice and talked to us about how experts think and how one of the most effective ways of learning to be expert is to get a sense of the thinking process. And so we focus a lot on the mindsets of successful job roles. And then we focus on the skill sets. How do you translate those mindsets into best practices? And what are the skills that need to be drilled and practiced so that we can become more effective at it? And then finally, we put them through high fidelity applications where they practice in realistic scenarios how to use those skills.
And that's there's a lot of learning up front, but there's part of what they're learning, like you said, in the mindset. Part of the mindset they learn is that they'll continue to learn forever. Learning is part of every day. And you have so many systems at ClearChoice for people to continue to learn on the job, not just do the job, but continue to improve. And one of the most interesting and unique is video. There's a lot, and there's really cool things, and there's games and things. But the last question I'll ask you is, can you say a little bit about how you use videos for people to continuously improve as they do the job?
Yeah, it's a great point. And to your point, one of our values is passion for learning. So we take that very seriously. And one of the things we realized is that a lot of what differentiates us from our competition, a lot of what makes us successful is skills training, listening skills, talking skills, problem-solving skills. And skills by their very nature require 3 things to improve. You need a model. What does a good skill look like? What is if you're learning to play the violin, what does Joshua Bell sound like? You need practice. can you practice what you see in the model? And then you need feedback about how your practice compares to the model. And so there's nothing like video to provide real feedback around how our skill practice is working. And we ended up, we use a lot of video in onboarding we video our role play so that we can see how our role plays compare to the models. But then in 2015, we actually ended up putting video cameras in every consult room in ClearChoice and in every doctor's office. And not to be Big Brother, but they're completely in the control of our patient education consultants and our doctors. They're the only ones that can look at them. They can send them other places. But what we found was that our patient education consultants and our doctors, when they watch their own videos, it makes it very easy to move from the performance zone to the learning zone and then back to the performance zone. So in between consults, they can watch the previous consult and just take a thin slice, whatever skill they're working on that week or that month, they can watch just that section and then immediately apply what they learned from the video, from the personal awareness of watching the video. They can immediately apply it in the next consult. And so we have this iterative, incremental back and forth between the performance zone, the learning zone, performance zone, learning zone. And we find that that's actually one of the ways of rapidly creating workforce skill and competency. And that video, Lizzy mentioned she needed to figure out a way to do 10,000 hours faster. Well, that's one of the ways. Is video, we find, accelerates the path to mastery.
Yeah, one thing that I've heard you say before is sometimes people are afraid of feedback, or they think the other person didn't really understand them. But you said video always tells the truth, right? So you see yourself on video, you're seeing the truth. Thank you so much, Andy. We'll bring it back later. I'd love to learn from you. So ClearChoice has so many things. They have games, they have kind of learning progressions, and for people mid in the progression, they have to help somebody kind of more novice in order to continue to progress. They have so many thoughtful things. It's really, really fun. They have a simulation space where people can simulate. So there's so much we could talk about that. But so Andy and ClearChoice come in chapter 8, where we paint what a learning organization looks like. Chapter 9 and 10 are about learning teams, how to foster learning teams. And then the next two chapters, 11 and 12, they are about leadership and how to lead for growth. And that's where we meet Francesca Lenci, who is joining us. Andy joined us from Denver, the headquarters of ClearChoice, and Francesca Lenci is joining us today from Milan in Italy. Welcome, Francesca.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. Actually, I am honored that I am part of two chapters. So therefore, it means that I can at least contribute a little bit with your community. So thanks for the invitation.
Yes, thank you for being here. I've learned so much from you, and I met Francesca like I met Lizzy. I was speaking for Siemens, and Francesca was also another one of the speakers. So I'm like learning from Francesca, and then reached out to her as I was writing the book. But Francesca is originally from Lima, Peru, and that's where she joined Siemens 16 years ago as a financial analyst. And Francesca, you've lived in several countries since, and worked in a lot of different parts of Siemens, taking on challenges. So my first question for you is, how do you know when, or how do you select kind of your next challenge and when to move to another country and take on an opportunity?
I think that my passion is about the curiosity and also to embrace new challenges. In this career path, I realized that some of them were promotions, some of them were doors that I knocked. But in general, I always reflect on what additional competences or skills I could learn from a different business. I realized that I've never been done the same job. No, every time that I've changed also for countries or for businesses or for type of business, meaning products, then projects, then systems, software. So I realized that, yes, this is something that is really my passion, to define the curiosity for new environments.
Great. And so you've gone through lots of countries and experiences in different continents, and you are now the Chief Financial Officer of Siemens Mobility in Italy. I would love to just talk a little bit about your journey there. When you arrived there, what did you observe in your team? What did they believe or not believe was possible, and how did you approach your leadership there?
I felt at the beginning thinking, okay, this is a new culture, so I need to build up a team, and starting with trust. Now I need to develop trust on my team since the beginning. So I decided also, it was before quite exactly within pandemia moment, no, just before that. So it was even more difficult. But I think that with a bridge and a good path of conversations and communications, we started to get this trust. And on the other side, I evaluate, and I set a vision of the team. And I said, look, we can do the things absolutely better. We need to be recognized as a benchmark of digital finance practices, or as a team, I will make you believe that we really have, or we can embrace new competences to be recognized that we are doing work with quality. And I think that it is today, after 4 years already. I think this is definitely, we achieved that.
Great. And one of the things that you did one of the things that you did is Siemens has this cash award that I would love for you to describe. And the team in Italy hadn't, I think, even gone for the cash award before, because I think there wasn't the belief that was possible. You know, Italy was a relatively smaller country and didn't have as many resources as countries against like the US. And this is an award where different kind of financial functions in Siemens in different countries kind of compete for excellence in cash management. And so because people didn't believe, they hadn't even like signed up for the award before, and you saw it as an opportunity. So can you say, like, how did you see that as an opportunity, and what did you do to use that as a way to change beliefs and change what was possible?
Yeah, definitely. This is a quite known award. So that I am living the financial culture is an award that I was always trying to get, especially in mobility, because it's an award for Siemens mobility. So at the beginning, I realized in some big conferences that India, US, or England, meaning huge regions, are usually the winners of that. So then I realized, okay, why Italy cannot be done? So we decided to evaluate all the metrics, what happened in the past, and especially not to compete with numbers or huge numbers, is to compete with the storytelling, meaning the learning, the past, so where they started, what measures we have done, and how do we achieve. And this is the storytelling that we sell to the company. And definitely we got very good results. At least now also we are recognized and known with one of the countries that every year we are participated in this award.
Yeah, you've been now after a lot of work, you've been a finalist for the award for the last 3 years, and
yes, and yeah, of course there are every year there are new metrics, no, that the other countries add, but at least for our regional management, we have been recognized by the winners of the heart. But regardless of the prize, because my team at the beginning, they've never believed that this would be possible. And I said, look, I mean, we can do anything that we would like to do, but we need just to fix a plan, to evaluate our competences, what we need to learn, to enter into this learning zone, to create some habits, and then we can go for it.
Yes, congratulations. And like you said before, I just want to make sure people heard it. You saw this award as an opportunity, and you obviously worked as a team to improve your financial metrics to be able to do that. But you also said that you, at the beginning, did a lot of work around trust and relationship building. So can you say a little bit more, which is so important? It's a foundation, right? Being able to feel safe with each other and be transparent with each other and share our thinking and collaborate both to learn and to perform is so important. And so can you talk a little bit about how you built trust and relationships early on?
Well, first of all, when I am responsible for a team, I would like to be remembered for my team, that I am someone who really support them. So, but not only in the professional path, but also to get in in the personal path, no, in the way that I am supporting, even if they have some personal issues or they have sick issues or family issues. We are a team and we can support them. So when I arrived, I realized that even if I am the boss or not, it does not make it does not mean that they will follow my instructions. No, they will follow my lead. So I started with the trust and the care. No, so before every meeting that we had together, I used to ask at the beginning, especially, how are you? How really are you? No, what is some of them have kids, some of them have not, have different family situations. So I ask, how is your sister? How are your kids? How are your pets? And I always try to really and authentically showing that I am really care of them, no, and also to create a safe environment, no, for them. And based on that, I realized that definitely this is from my perspective, this is the way to really embrace a learning zone.
Great. So the last question I'll ask you, Francesca, is in the book, I mentioned how it's important for us leaders to continue to learn ourselves throughout our careers, and to show that to others as well, to make that visible, to be a role model of not just performance, but also of learning. So can you share one or two ways that you, like habits you have to continue to develop yourself as a professional and as a leader?
I think I could mention two. The first is I try to fix 30 minutes each month in my agenda to reflect on career path, which also could include myself, but also could include the others. Meaning, not because if I do care others or I do push the others to certain objectives, also this will be also my achievement. So this is the famous 30 minutes that I tried, despite that the agenda is always quite difficult to do, is try to reflect. And the second is that if I have the opportunity to get a chat with a mentor or someone with a coach or someone could guide me in a certain situation, I used to also use this tool.
Great. And you've mentioned you're in very frequent kind of conversation with your mentors when you have a decision to make or you have a challenge. Awesome. Thank you so much, Francesca. I will bring in Becky, who will set us up for the final part of our conversation. If people have questions, please submit your questions for anybody. And I look forward to the panel conversation.
Thank you. And what a great hour of learning so far. Before we move to Q&A with our special guests and with our author, Eduardo Briceño, I do want to share with you just a few ways that you can stay connected to the content in this forthcoming book, The Performance Paradox. So the book will be launching and available to the world on Tuesday, September 5th. So now is the perfect time to pre-order so that you'll receive the book on launch day. And Wendy, my colleague, is going to be putting some links in the chat. The book is available through all your favorite online retailers. But we also want to let you know that Eduardo has created some very special bonuses, whether you pre-order one book or whether you pre-order many books. And we will also put the links to those pre-order bonuses into the chat. There's a place on Eduardo's website where you can submit your receipt when you've purchased the book and where you can receive those amazing bonuses. I also want to let you know that we have two more upcoming events with Eduardo. One is coming on August 22nd at noon Eastern with some additional folks who have been featured in the book who will be with us for more conversation about the performance paradox. And then on September 5th, the launch day, we will have a special virtual launch celebration and you will not want to miss it. All three of the events, today's event and the two upcoming events, are completely different. So I would encourage you to come to all of them, because there'll be different learning and conversation on each of them. So as we transition to questions, I love seeing that we have Francesca and Andy and Lizzy back. And if you have a specific question for one of them, please feel free to direct that in the chat. But I do have a question that came in from Christina, and she is asking, what experiences have you had to push executives, turn them around, who know that learning is key? They say it, but they don't do it. They stay in a comfort zone with a fear of risk taking and zero tolerance of mistakes. So it sounds like this is an environment in which executives are talking about learning, but they're not actually living out openness to learning. Not sure who would like to answer.
to look at what that can look like if we can get in the shoes of a leader. I would love, Francesca, if you can share your experience of when you felt everybody was against you, so that we can maybe like empathize with a leader who might appear to be hesitant to something. But like, what do you do when you felt that everybody was against you? And then maybe because Andy, you work a lot in the organizational level, then I'll ask you to comment on that as well in terms of how you view that as well. So Francesca, do you want to share your experience?
Sure, yes. There was a point in my career that I realized that this was why everyone is thinking different than me. So then after reflections, and instead to be stuck saying everyone is against or everyone has a different and they are wrong and I am right, I discussed with my manager in this moment and I asked for a professional coach. So an external coach, and then I get something that is really important for me is the awareness, meaning it's something that an external it's bringing you this another point of view that you really interiorize, you get this in a new mindset, and then you realize that everything that everyone is saying might be true or might be not, but you are not stuck in the same thought. So, and I always share this to my team and to new teams, because it happened several years ago, because it's very valuable to ask for help, to ask for a survey, to ask for a feedback. Even anonymous feedback is if your team is not entitled or they are quite afraid to do it, because to receive another point of view is definitely something that really helps in your career.
Thank you, Francesca. Andy, do you have any comments?
One of the things that is important to understand is executives who are approving budgets for learning, no matter what the budgets are working for somebody, and typically they're working for the CEO or they're working for the board, and there are certain measures that their success is measured by, and that the key to getting support for any learning initiative is linking those learning initiatives to those metrics that the executives are measured by. So in simple words, if you can link your learning initiative to earnings per share, to profitability, to higher revenues, to more efficiency, expense management, I found that tends to get the attention of the executives. And there is data out there. I mentioned in one of my posts there that Human Synergistics has produced some data that shows that adaptive constructive practices, essentially learning organizations that have a passion for self-actualization, see revenue growth over 10 years of 682% compared to 166% in the unadaptive organizations. They see net profits going up by more than 750% compared to just 1% in fear-based organizations or non-learning organizations. So there's data there. Use the data to make the case that, CEO, this is going to help you look good to the board. And believe me, you'll get budget for it.
And ideally, that's great. Thank you both. So there's the kind of connection to the performance. Again, Andy's a chief performance officer. He's not a chief learning officer, he's a chief performance officer. Yeah, that's so much of what he does is to drive learning so that performance increases. So there's the kind of the connection financially, and then also I think what you said, Andy, ties to the culture of the organization. If the executive leadership and the CEO understand these connections and are on board with driving the learning culture, and they're themselves modeling learning like we heard from Francesca, then that makes it easier for everybody. At the same time, when we do these types of efforts, some people will love them and just jump in right away, and other people might be more hesitant. And we tend to just kind of get frustrated by the people who are most hesitant, but we need to kind of build on strength and work with the people who are ready and support them and be in collaboration, and then invite other people over time. And there are people who are going to take more time to come in later, but let's kind of build on strength and work where people are there, and also focus on what we can control. And over time, like sometimes, you try and some people might not change and it might not be the right fit. You might need to part ways, but over time, this is work that people really gravitate to because they want the learning zone enriches us both in work and in life. So people embrace it.
Thank you. So earlier on in the hour, we talked about the fact that it's not mistakes that help us learn, it's reflecting on mistakes. So Matthew has a question. How do we identify the reasons for the failure? And once you do that, how do you prioritize which areas to address?
Lizzy, you're a master on this, so why don't you comment on what you do and your team?
Yeah, I'm super good at making mistakes. I just kidding. No, so it's interesting when you said, how do you identify what you did wrong? So that's where you really need a team dynamic, and you need people, even if it's maybe a trusted. I have a couple of friends. I'm in YPO, and we have what's called Forum, and it's a trusted group of other business owners that are really successful. And so it's either reflecting internally or even just with them and saying, okay, I did this wrong. I'm trying to think what I did wrong here or how it went wrong. Because if you are living in that echo chamber, right? I remember reading about the most successful presidents. The most successful presidents are the ones that brought in people that would challenge them or would be from the other parties or that would tell them they were doing wrong. So if you live in an echo chamber where you're surrounded by your team, and you have to be careful with that, because sometimes they don't want to get fired. So they don't want to tell you straightforwardly, you did this wrong. So you need to be able to not only enable them. When we were talking about executives, I mean, maybe the executives also feel like if they're doing something wrong, or if they admit they did something wrong, they'll get fired, or they'll get demoted, or they won't get promoted. So you have to be able to enable your team, and then have the right people to help you identify what those failures were, and what sometimes you'll never know. You'll absolutely never know. So you need to identify the 3 or 4 options of what could have gone wrong and what you can do in the future to change that, or not only in yourself, but organizationally. Sometimes it is just you. It's like, I needed to do this differently. I'm sorry I failed you guys, but I'll do that in the future.
Thank you, Lizzy. And I think something that came to my mind as you were talking also is the idea that we can't improve without changing. So we might have 3 or 4 hypotheses for what might go wrong. We identify something to tweak, something to change going forward, and we'll learn from trying those new things. But if we don't change anything, we're definitely not going to get better.
That's A/B testing at the end of the day, right? So you A/B test as if you would, or like an e-commerce company, and say, I'll try this 10 times and I'll try this 10 times. And okay, maybe I was wrong about what, I need to fix, and I need to go back to that.
Awesome. Becky, any other questions?
I'm going to take one more question. So the question is, sometimes it's hard to reach out for help and to find mentors. So how have the panelists gone about doing that from a lens of learning?
Well, does anybody want to take that? I can take that with a personal experience, but does anybody else want to comment?
I'd be happy to speak to it as well. And,
sure.
and I would just say, I'm an old guy. I've been around for a long time, and I think I've learned more from going to professional associations and sitting at the feet of the giants who have gone before me and gone before us. And there are a lot of professional associations. For me, American Society of Training Development and International Society of Performance Improvement, North American Simulation and Gaming Association. Whatever industry you're in, find the professional association and just go participate. You will absorb a ton, and you will meet people who will become your de facto mentors. You can't help, especially if you're engaging, if you're getting involved in the different study groups and showing up. Mentors love finding people that will help them and listen to them and allow them to pass along their knowledge. So, just engage and ask for help.
Thank you, Andy. I would add that that resonates, and I would add that each of us has different views of what help is, or feedback is, or mistakes are. So for example, some people are afraid of asking for feedback, other people are not. They love feedback, and we can change. Like I used to be really afraid of feedback and not like it at all, not ask for it. I wanted to portray myself as perfect, but I've shifted that completely over time. Same thing with asking for help. Asking for help, I now see as an opportunity to, we all love to contribute to other people, and you heard that today from others, right? So when I ask for help, I give somebody else an opportunity to contribute to me, right? And to contribute to somebody else. It also is an opportunity to build relationships. So I've learned, I've kind of met people and built relationships by asking for help. And one very specific example was when I became a full-time speaker. I sent an email to somebody I didn't know. His name is Chip Conley. I had read one of his books, and I asked him like a very simple question that I was hoping he would answer by email because I didn't know him. And he replied very kindly, and he said, I'm happy to talk to you about that. How about we meet for 20 minutes? And we met for 20 minutes. And in that call, he took the initiative of saying, hey, I think you should write a book. Like, do you mind if I introduce you to a literary agent? And I had not thought about writing a book. Like, I just didn't think I was ready or that anybody would be interested in publishing a book from me. But I said, yes, I took on the challenge, like, we've heard today, like, this is something that I could learn a lot from and be a big contribution. So I get in dialogue with a literary agent. I ended up with a book deal, and 3 years later, here we are. And I've also interviewed over 100 people and learned so much from them, and created something that I hope will contribute to other people. So that all came from asking for help. I asked for help. Now Chip is my mentor. We know each other really well, and I've met so many people and collaborated with so many people, including our time today has just come up because I asked for help. So I'll turn it back to Becky. Yeah, sorry, Francesca.
Sorry, I just would like to add quickly about mentorship that it is not, this is on one way and it's fine, but there is another way that from my perspective is if you start to work in your networking, meaning to start to knowing people, you don't need specifically maybe one mentor to guide you. You can just raise a question to someone you could admire, also within your own organizations. You could ask this question and maybe the answer, as you mentioned, could change your life. So it's not necessarily a mentoring program. If you don't have the time, you don't have the access, you don't have that. Also, you can also have mentorship, also a peer coaching with your own colleagues. So it's just that you can raise your questions, but just to get this courage to do it and to reach other colleagues.
Thank you so much, Francesca. Just a quick reminder that the book is coming September 5th. We would encourage you to pre-order today and visit the links that we're putting into the chat to find out about all the bonuses that you can get when you pre-order one book or when you pre-order many books in bulk for your organization. And we don't want you to miss a few more opportunities to learn live with Eduardo and his special guests on August 22nd at noon Eastern, and again at September 5th at noon Eastern. And it's okay to sign up for all of them because each of these learning experiences will be different. So as we wrap up our time together today, I know, Eduardo, that you have some thoughts that you want to send us out with.
Sure, I will share that. So the book has 3 parts. I mentioned 2 parts. The third part is about transforming from kind of individual contribution to global impact. And it's about what we do in the performance zone when it's time to perform. And that's chapter 13. And chapter 14 is about how engaging in the learning zone in our life changes our life, not only because we reach higher outcomes. Like Clear Choice Dental has a 50% market share in their core market. They're by far the market leader, right? Lizzy, is a super high performer. Francesca has been recognized as a finalist in this amazing award, competing with huge countries. So the performance is super high, but the journey is really what's the greatest impact. It's just the learning zone brings so much to our lives because we are discovering new things every day, and that brings awe to us. And also because we're building deeper and closer relationships with each other, because we're asking each other more questions. So we are uncovering more of the other person. We're having more insights, so that we are evolving ourselves more, and that brings a lot of fulfillment. So that's what chapter 14 is about. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you especially to Lizzy, Andy, and Francesca. I could have spoken with each of you for 3 hours. As you know, I've interviewed each of you for well over an hour at least, and heard you speak in other cases. So it's been amazing to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining.
Eduardo, just
Eduardo.
a last comment. I had the privilege to get the copy in advance, and I can only recommend, this is one of the fantastic books that I have read. You make a summary of complex situations with a lot of very good examples that definitely you can easily identify and then make a reflection. So thanks for this fantastic book.
Thank you so much, Francesca. It means so much coming from you.